The first thing I found when I got home from my business trip was the sex toy in my wife's purse. After that, I found the rage. I smiled, a cold, tight thing, and swapped the toy for a high-voltage stun gun. Later that night, a scream like a slaughtered pig echoed from the master bedroom. I'd been gone for days, and the exhaustion was bone-deep as I walked through the door. Chloe, my wife, and Leo, her stepbrother, were sprawled on the couch watching some trashy reality show. She was in a thin silk robe, and the air in our apartment felt thick, charged with something I didn't want to name. The dining table was a war zone of takeout containers and half-eaten food. A stack of dirty dishes sat festering, a squadron of flies circling above them like vultures. The floor, once polished hardwood, was littered with crumpled napkins and snack wrappers, coated in a grimy film that stuck to the soles of my shoes. When they saw me, they both flinched and scooted apart, a clumsy attempt to create space. They clearly hadn't expected me back so soon. "Ethan," Leo stammered, his voice cracking. "You're back." Chloe's tone was flat, as if she were commenting on the weather. "There are some leftovers on the table. When you're done eating, you can do the dishes." "Eat." I stared at the fly-covered disaster zone. A wave of nausea rolled through my stomach. In all our years of marriage, I felt like I was seeing this woman for the first time. And after the dishes, mop the floor. "Leo and I are going to hit the gym for a couple of hours," she said, not even waiting for a response. She was already heading to the bedroom to change into her yoga pants, grabbing Leo's arm to pull him along. I stepped in front of them, my face a thundercloud. "Chloe, don't you think you two are a little too close? He's your stepbrother." She shoved me, her eyes flashing with anger. "He's my brother, Ethan. What is wrong with your head?" Leo had the decency to look ashamed, pulling his arm free. "Dude, you're being a little paranoid. Don't listen to him. He's crazy," Chloe spat, grabbing Leo again and storming out the door. The apartment was silent except for the buzzing of flies. What the hell had I married? I sank onto the couch, head in my hands. That's when I saw it. Chloe's designer handbag, left behind in her haste. A sick curiosity, a devil on my shoulder, made me reach for it. I pulled the zipper. Inside, nestled amongst the usual clutter, was a vibrator. The packaging was gone. It had been used. The world stopped. It felt like a physical blow, a fist closing around my heart, squeezing until the pain was blinding. We'd been married for years. She hadn't bought this for me. I refused to believe it. Refused to believe Chloe would do this behind my back. But a quick Google Lens scan of the model confirmed what it was. The cold, hard result mocking me from my phone screen. The truth was a shard of ice in my gut. Chloe was cheating on me. Could it be Leo? My face hardened as I dug back into her purse, searching for more. I found it almost immediately. A red iPhone. This wasn't her usual phone. She always made a big deal about supporting American tech companies, never using Apple. If I remembered correctly, this was a gift from Leo when he moved in with us after coming back from college out of state. My hand trembled as I powered it on. The lock screen appeared. I typed in her birthday. Wrong password. I tried my birthday. Wrong password. I almost laughed. What a joke. Why would I even try that? On a dark whim, I typed in the date Leo had moved in. It unlocked. Of course, the iMessage app had another lock on it. I typed in Leo's birthday. It opened. My finger hovered over the screen. Maybe I didn't need to see any more. The evidence was already overwhelming. Leo had been living with us for 3 months, and their behavior, which I'd dismissed as an odd but innocent closeness, was now cast in a sickening new light. I had been a complete and utter fool. But I had to know. I had to kill that last sliver of hope. With a shaking hand, I tapped open the chat log. The contact name was just Leo. The messages inside sent me plummeting into an abyss. "Leo, when are you coming home? I can't stand the smell of that fat pig anymore. Every time he comes home, I feel like I'm at a funeral. Leo, please hurry back." On the day Leo arrived, I had been out of town. I remembered video calling Chloe. She'd said she was at a hotel, helping him get checked in because our apartment was too small, and she didn't want him to be uncomfortable. "Leo, are you at the airport yet? I'm waiting for you at the hotel." Winky face. "Chloe, I brought you that new toy you wanted. Ooh, I can't wait. Chloe, I've missed you so much." On May 20th, our 3rd wedding anniversary, we were at a studio for a photo shoot. "Chloe, why aren't you with me today? Are you with that fat pig again? Send me a video, Chloe. I'm waiting downstairs from the photo studio." "Chloe, You sure he won't get suspicious if I just move in? Chloe, living at your place is fking awesome. The very last message, from just a few hours ago, read, I bought something new. Let's try it out tonight. My stomach churned, and I fought the urge to vomit. To think those vile words had come from Chloe's mouth. I couldn't believe it. I had thought she was just a little lazy, someone who hated housework but deep down loved me. She had always defended me to her family, and she hadn't demanded an expensive ring or a lavish wedding. Now I saw the truth. Marrying me was just a cover. Her real goal was to be with Leo. The two of them had probably been together long before I was ever in the picture. The shameless bastards. I was just a pawn in their twisted game. A wallet to fund their lifestyle. My gaze turned to ice. Chloe, you wanted to play dirty. Fine. Two can play. I went to my go bag from the closet and pulled out a stun gun. It was a compact, powerful model, designed to look exactly like the toy in her purse, but capable of delivering a 300-volt shock. I always kept it with me on business trips for self-defense. Next, I picked up my phone and made some calls. I invited Chloe's mother, her stepfather, and a whole slew of their relatives to come visit us in Columbus for a week. All expenses paid, flights, hotel, food, everything. Hearing an offer like that, they jumped at it. Ever since we'd gotten married, they'd been looking for ways to leech off me. The fact that Chloe hadn't asked for a big dowry had been a point of contention for years. I picked a date for their arrival and told them I'd meet them at the airport. In that moment, I felt like a monster they had created. After taking photos of all the evidence on her secret phone, I carefully placed everything back in her purse, zipping it shut as if it had never been touched. Just as I finished, the front door opened. Chloe stood there, looking anxious. I quickly threw on an apron, pretending to be cleaning up. Honey, I forgot my purse. Just came back to grab it, she said, her eyes darting around. She snatched the bag from the couch and immediately opened it, checking to see if anything was out of place. Suddenly, the stun gun, which she thought was her toy, tumbled out onto the floor. She froze, her body going rigid. A look of pure panic crossed her face before she quickly composed herself. Oh, honey, this is a stun gun I bought for self-defense. You're not home a lot, and I get scared being alone. I just stared at her, my face a cold mask, and nodded slowly. A stun gun, you say? Perfect. I'm tired. You can clean up the rest of this mess, I said, pulling off the apron and heading to the guest room. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe she was just thrown off. But for the first time ever, Chloe agreed without a fight. I locked the door behind me and set my phone to silent. With me in the house, they wouldn't dare try anything. Leo went to his room early, and Chloe knocked on my door a few times. But I just told her I was exhausted and needed to sleep. The next day, after they both left, I installed a network of high-fidelity, wide-angle security cameras throughout the apartment. Then I sent Chloe a text. Have to go to San Francisco for a week. Urgent business. That evening, I rented a large passenger van and drove to the airport to pick up Chloe's family. Hearing it was an all-expenses-paid vacation, her mother had invited half their town. A whole van full of distant cousins and second uncles, once removed, piled in. It was perfect. It was exactly what I wanted. Her mother, Karen, was already preening, loudly telling all the relatives how I was a young, successful business owner and how her decision to let her daughter marry me without a big wedding was the smartest thing she'd ever done. Gary, Chloe's stepfather, beamed with pride, bragging to the old-timers as if I were his own flesh and blood. I took them all to a high-end steakhouse downtown. The moment they heard everything was on my tab, they went wild. Lobsters, prime rib, and expensive bottles of wine appeared on the table as if summoned by magic. Gary was so excited he practically stood on his chair, doing shots and arm wrestling with his cousins, completely oblivious when I slipped out the back door. Pay the bill? Not a chance in hell. On my way out, I even snagged 2 unopened bottles of top-shelf bourbon from the bar. These people wanted to bleed me dry. They were her family, her problem. She was the cheat, not me. The moment they got my text saying I was out of town, Chloe and Leo rushed home. I watched them on the security feed, the hidden microphones picking up every word. I leaned closer to my phone screen. Chloe, is that fat pig really gone on another business trip? Leo's voice was a low, excited whisper. Not like me. If you were my girl, I'd never leave you. Chloe let out a dismissive laugh. Don't even mention him. He's such a buzzkill. So, tonight? Leo asked, a hint of hesitation in his voice. I don't know. His eyes looked weird yesterday. Something felt off. What are you afraid of? Chloe scoffed. He always says he's going on a trip, and he never comes back early. Yesterday was a fluke. Besides, he's going to San Francisco. That's at least a week. Easy. Leo's excitement returned full force. Chloe, I hear you got a new toy. She giggled, playfully shoving him. You're impossible. Hee hee. Eh? Chloe's laugh turned into a sultry murmur as she pulled Leo toward the master bedroom. A vein throbbed in my forehead. I squeezed my phone so hard I thought the screen would crack. These two degenerates, right under my own roof. I wanted to storm in there right now and tear them apart with my bare hands. I took a long, deep breath, forcing the rage down. I pulled out my other phone and dialed Chloe's mother. Mom, Dad, Chloe's on the balcony. I think she's going to jump. You have to come quick. I made my voice crack, pitching it into a desperate, sobbing cry. I was a damn good actor. Ethan, what's happening? Why would Chloe want to jump? Karen sounded frantic on the other end. I don't know. I just got to the parking lot and saw her standing on the ledge. I yelled, making sure I sounded completely panicked. On the other end, I could hear a commotion as Karen relayed the news. The whole parasitic clan was coming. About 10 minutes later, as I watched the security feed, a blood-curdling scream ripped through the apartment, so loud it made the camera shake. Ag? Chloe. What did you do? Leo's voice was a terrified, trembling mess. His whole body was convulsing. I don't know. Chloe stammered back, her own body twitching uncontrollably. Her teeth were chattering. It's electric. Holy SHT. Leo was practically crying, his eyes rolling back in his head. Get it off me, he shrieked. I can't find the switch. Chloe screamed, but the current surging through her only made her seize and jerk violently. A thin wisp of blue smoke began to rise. Through the screen, I could almost smell the stench of burning flesh. By the time I got off the elevator, my front door was already a circus. Karen, Gary, and the whole gang of relatives were there, along with a building security guard and a few neighbors who'd been woken by the noise. They were packed so tightly in the hallway you couldn't see the door. Mr. Cole, you're finally here, the security guard said, rushing over. There's a major disturbance coming from your apartment. It's bothering the other residents. He gave me a confused look, seeing me step out of the elevator. Wait, you weren't home? Did someone break in? A neighbor immediately chimed in, her voice loud and gossipy. No way. I definitely heard a man and a woman in there. That sentence was a lit match in a fireworks factory. The crowd's mood instantly shifted. Everyone started looking at me with pity. The poor husband, working his ass off on the road, while his wife brings another man home. And to get caught like this, with security and the neighbors all gathered, it was the ultimate public shaming. Gary and Karen's faces were grim. Don't you people talk nonsense? Karen snapped. My daughter is just under a lot of stress. She was just letting off some steam. That's right. The relatives chimed in, trying to wave people away. Go on, scatter. Nothing to see here. But nobody moved an inch. Just then, another series of piercing screams echoed from inside the apartment. The crowd craned their necks, more eager than ever. Mr. Cole, you should probably open the door and see what's going on, the guard urged. Now, even Gary and Karen were frantic. Ethan, hurry. Open the door. I sighed, putting on a show of reluctance as I fumbled with the key. All right, I guess we should all see what's happening together. The door swung open with a loud click. The sight that greeted them was like a lightning strike. Everyone froze. Chloe and Leo were on the bed, writhing and spasming, locked in a grotesque embrace with the buzzing, sparking object between them. The crowd erupted. Holy crap, are they working with live wires? Jesus Christ, what the hell is that? They're gonna fry themselves. Man, this guy's life is over. His wife cheats and he gets to walk in on this. Worse than just finding them in bed. Dude, shut up. He's standing right there. The show had begun. I launched myself into the role of the devastated husband, stumbling forward with a gut-wrenching cry. Chloe, what are you two doing? Collapsed dramatically. I can't live like this. It's over. It's all over. Oh, God. Just kill me now. I wailed, my voice raw with fake anguish. Gary and Karen's faces were beet red. They looked like they wanted the floor to swallow them whole. Now the relatives were in an uproar. I always said there was something not right between those two, and you didn't believe me. How was I supposed to know they were this shameless? They've disgraced the whole family. I could just die. What kind of parents raise children like this? Every word was a dagger twisting in Gary and Karen's ears. Their faces cycled through shades of red and white. The security guard rushed over to help me up from my theatrical heap on the floor. Mr. Cole, maybe you should try to help them? I think your wife is in serious trouble. Right? Help them. Of course. I scrambled to my feet, looking around frantically until I spotted a heavy, wooden curtain rod in the corner of the room. It had a nice heft to it, probably a good 10 pounds. I walked over to Gary, my face a mask of sorrow, and offered him the thick rod. Dad, maybe you should do it. Gary looked like he was about to have a heart attack. His face was the color of liver. He just shook his head, waving his hands frantically. Fine, I'll do it myself. I wiped away a non-existent tear. Chloe, I'm coming to save you. I swung the rod. Whack. Aya. The blow landed squarely on Leo's back. His body arched violently as he gasped for air. Oh, I'm so sorry. I missed, I said, my voice full of apology. It's my first time doing something like this. You know? Honey, don't worry. I'll get it right this time. I lifted the rod again, spat on my hands, and rubbed them together for a better grip. Thwack! Another dull thud. This time, Chloe's body convulsed violently. The buzzing sound intensified, and a fresh wave of smoke puffed up, carrying the smell of burnt hair. She was practically cooking. Ash! Help! Me! Chloe's voice was a choked whisper. Turns out, I'd missed again. This time I'd hit the stun gun's power button, kicking it into high gear. Ethan, you missed. Missed? Leo gasped. A powerful arc of electricity jumped between them, a bright blue spark in the dim room. The smell of scorched flesh was so strong now that people started covering their mouths. Ethan, please, help, save me. It's almost over, please. Their voices were trembling, and Leo looked like he was about to pass out. Sorry, I'm just so nervous, I said, wiping more imaginary sweat from my brow. I lifted the heavy curtain rod again. 1 swing, 2 swings. I must have swung it a dozen times. Miraculously, I missed the stun gun every single time. By the end, Chloe and Leo were bruised and swollen into unrecognizable messes. It was all my fault, of course. My technique was just so unrefined. Finally, the stun gun seemed to run out of juice. The buzzing stopped, but the area where it had been was now a charred, blackened mess. I don't know if it can be fixed. Chloe and Leo were unconscious, or at least they were smart enough to pretend to be. With their entire extended family watching, and half the crowd filming on their phones and uploading it live, playing dead was their only option. Ambulance sirens wailed as they tore into the apartment complex, drawing even more curious residents to their windows. By the time the video hit the building's resident group chat, the place had exploded. More rubberneckers were on their way over. As the paramedics loaded Chloe and Leo onto stretchers, they must have regained some consciousness. With what little strength they had, they both managed to pull the sheets over their heads. Gary rushed up to the lead paramedic, his face a mess of panic and desperation. Doctor, is my son going to be okay? Doctor, please look at my daughter. She's all burnt. Doctor, the paramedic, clearly annoyed, finally snapped. Sir, can't you see for yourself? He's charred black. What do you think? You want my badge? You can be the doctor. Gary and Karen recoiled, their faces flushing with shame. By now, a larger crowd of neighbors had gathered, a sea of raised smartphones capturing every moment. One nosy guy leaned into another. Hey, what happened? Man, it's brutal. They're totally fried. What do you mean? The man, sensing a viral opportunity, pushed his phone closer, trying to get a shot of their faces. But the sheets were still covering them. This was my cue. I threw myself into character again, rushing forward and collapsing next to one of the stretchers, wailing dramatically. Chloe, Leo, you have to be okay. How will I go on without you? I cried, tears of pure fiction streaming down my face as I beat my fists on the side of the stretcher. A nurse gently tried to pull me away. In my moment of grief-stricken panic, my hand shot out and ripped the sheet off Chloe's face. Her pale, blackened, and bruised face was exposed for all to see. The crowd surged forward. Phones flashed. The sheet was trampled underfoot. Forgotten. Holy SHT. This is going to be the top story on the local news tomorrow. Don't worry. I'm uploading this right now. I'll even buy some ad boosts to make sure it goes viral. So shameless. And I heard their parents are right here watching. That's them over there. The sea of phones turned, the lenses now pointing directly at Gary, Karen, and their horrified relatives. They looked like they wanted to dig a hole and crawl into it. Their first time in the spotlight, and it was for this. Stop filming. Please, stop filming. I shouted, pretending to shield Chloe's face. How is my wife supposed to live after this? Who will ever hire her? This video will probably end up going international. In my flurry of activity, my eyes darted over to the other stretcher. Don't you dare! Gary shrieked, realizing what I was about to do. But he was too late. I yanked the sheet off Leo. He was now completely exposed to the ravenous crowd. There he is, the other one. Get a shot of him. The crowd's attention snapped over, their cameras zooming in, particularly on the charred mess between his legs. What's that weird smell? Is he cooked? Ha 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 ha. I'm already sending this to my work group chat. Leo stared at me with an expression of pure, helpless hatred. He was too weak to move, forced to watch as I orchestrated his ultimate humiliation. I looked at him with a mask of sincere apology. I'm so sorry, Leo. Your sister's a bit more sensitive, you know? I had to protect her first. Karen had now thrown herself onto Chloe's stretcher, sobbing hysterically. My baby, my poor daughter, what's happened to you? She might have been genuinely crying. But who cared? Everyone else was too busy filming. A doctor pulled me aside. You're the patient's family member, correct? I nodded meekly. The situation looks grim, he said, his voice low. You should follow them to the hospital. We'll need you to sign consent forms. No problem, I said. Their parents are here too. The doctor gave me a long, deep look, one filled with what I could only assume was profound pity. He patted my shoulder. You hang in there. At the hospital, it was just me, Gary, Karen, and a few of the older relatives. They sat on the hard plastic benches outside the emergency room, looking like they were on death row. They couldn't meet my eyes, just stared at the floor in shame. I stood by the door, chain-smoking one cigarette after another. I could overhear a couple of young nurses whispering nearby. Did you hear? Those two patients who just came in. They're the ones from that viral video. Oh my God. I saw it. There are clips everywhere. I heard from one of the doctors the guys, you know, is a total loss. And the woman is in bad shape too. They said she smelled like a barbecue. City folk are wild. Hearing this, the family members hunched over even further, like turtles retreating into their shells. Finally, a surgeon came out, looking grim. Who are the family members? I said. We are, Gary and Karen added, standing up. The surgeon glanced at us, noting we were all there. Gary and Karen looked at me, their faces full of apology, about to say something, but the doctor cut them off. The patient's conditions are not optimistic. The parents' faces tightened. I just smirked, waiting for the punchline. The woman, Chloe, her condition is severe. There's complete necrosis of the muscle tissue. Some of the nerves are, well, they're cooked. Karen's face went white. What do we do? Doctor, please, you have to save my daughter. What can we do? The doctor said flatly, we remove the dead tissue first, then we can try to graft an artificial replacement. But the area of damaged muscle is extensive. The graft might not take well, and there could be complications down the line. I nodded decisively. Do it. Remove whatever you have to. Saving her life is the most important thing. Karen, though devastated, could only close her eyes and agree. When it came to life or limb, the choice was clear. The doctor continued. As for the man, Leo, his situation is much more serious. The area is completely carbonized. We have no choice but to perform a total excision. He will be sterile for the rest of his life. You need to prepare yourselves for that. Hearing this, Gary looked like he'd been struck by lightning. The blood rushed to his head, and he swayed on his feet, nearly fainting. A moment later, a raw, gut-wrenching wail tore from his throat. My son. My son. It's all gone. It's all gone. He and Karen were a blended family, each bringing one child into the marriage. They were too old to have more children. For him, this was the end of his family line. His world had just collapsed. Cut it off. Cut it all off, I said calmly, taking the consent forms. His life is what matters. What good is anything else if he's dead? I scribbled my signature on the line for next of kin. Gary was too overcome with grief to sign, so Karen had to grab his hand and force his thumbprint onto the page. The doctor collected the paperwork, then added, Also, the total cost for treatment will be at least $300,000. We need a deposit of $100,000 to begin. Suddenly, Gary wasn't dizzy anymore. He and Karen both snapped their heads toward me. Their expressions unmistakable. They wanted me to be the fall guy again. I held up my hands and put on a sorrowful face. All my money goes into a joint account with Chloe. I don't know the password. I even pulled out my phone and showed them my empty Venmo balance. Karen shot a venomous look at Gary. This is all your son's fault. You pay for it. Gary shot back. Indignant. What do you mean my son's fault? It was your daughter. I'm not paying for this. You pay for it. Karen instantly transformed into a screeching harpy. Are you kidding me? I'm an old woman. Where am I going to get that kind of money? You and your son are both worthless pieces of trash, ganging up on a poor widow and her daughter. Gary's face turned purple with rage. You're full of crap. What about your pension? Use that to save them. It's not like I won't pay you back. That was the last straw for Karen. She lunged at him. You have the nerve to mention my pension? You conniving old bastard. You secretly transferred your retirement savings to your ex-wife, and now you're after mine. You shameless old hag. I'll kill you. Karen shrieked, clawing at Gary's face and ripping out a clump of his white hair. The two of them started brawling right there in the waiting room. They knocked over the water cooler, sent chairs flying, and tables crashing to the ground. You bitch. My family is ruined because of you and your whore daughter. I'll kill you. Gary roared, kicking Karen hard in the stomach, making her double over and gasp for air. Karen fought back like a cornered animal, scratching his face until it was a bloody mess. It was a full-on Jerry Springer episode in the middle of the pristine hospital corridor, and the onlookers were stunned. Finally, security guards rushed in and forcibly pulled them apart. They were both a wreck, clothes torn, covered in blood and bruises. The surgeon walked over, his face a mask of utter disbelief. Are you two going to pay or not? If you keep delaying, I'm going to have to issue a critical condition notice. We'll pay. We'll pay. We have to treat them. I interjected quickly. In the end, Gary and Karen each paid half, essentially covering one kid apiece. After they'd swiped their cards, I clutched my chest and gave them my most earnest look. Dad, Mom, don't you worry. As soon as Chloe wakes up, I'll make sure you get every penny back. The light above the operating room door finally went out. Everyone let out a small sigh of relief. But the surgery hadn't been smooth. A nurse had come out with form after form, and I signed them all without hesitation, giving the same instruction every time. Just remove it all, as long as you can save their lives. At this point, Gary and Karen could only nod along numbly. The doctors, perhaps moved by our understanding nature, promised they would do their best. The next day, when the doors to the recovery room opened, Gary and Karen rushed in. I just smiled coldly and left the hospital. I took all the evidence, the photos, the text logs, the security footage, to my lawyer and had him draw up divorce papers. Let the two of them be tied together in their misery forever. I was done. My phone started blowing up with calls from Chloe's number. I didn't have to guess why. She wanted me to come pay the bills. I blocked her number. I waited until evening before I finally went back to the hospital. When I pushed open the door to their room, Gary and Karen were gone. It was just Chloe and Leo. A foul, restroom-like odor hung in the air, probably due to the surgical complications and artificial parts. The nurse who had been changing their dressings had her hand clamped over her mouth and fled the room the second she was done. Seeing me, Chloe forced herself to look up, her face pale and drawn. "Honey, you're here," she whispered. My face was a block of ice. I slapped the divorce papers down on her bedside table. "It's over, Chloe. Sign them." My voice was low and hard. "You get nothing. The house, the savings, the business. It's all mine." Panic flared in her eyes. "No, Ethan, please." It was a moment of weakness. I was a fool. "Forgive me. Please forgive me. I'll be a good wife from now on. I swear. I'll cook for you. I'll clean. I'll do anything." I just shook my head. Not interested. I don't do sloppy seconds. I gestured toward Leo. "You love him so much? Fine. I'm setting you free. You can have each other." Tears streamed down her face. She tried to sit up to plead with me more, but the movement pulled at her stitches. A sharp gasp of pain escaped her lips, and she nearly fainted. The foul stench in the room intensified. I calmly pulled a disposable mask from my pocket and put it on. "If you don't sign," I said, my voice muffled but clear, "I'll upload the full unedited videos to every social media platform and send a link to your entire family's group chat. Chloe's face went chalk white. You're despicable, Ethan. Despicable? I let out a short, harsh laugh. More despicable than what you did? Outside the room, a small crowd of ghouls had gathered again. Chloe and Leo were now C-list celebrities of the worst kind, a top trending topic. People were constantly trying to get a look at them. Some even live streaming from the hallway. Their phone cameras pointed right at the two of them. So that's the woman? TSK. Shameless. How can a woman be so evil? It's disgusting. The whispers from the hallway were like daggers. Chloe's face burned with humiliation. She wished the floor would open up and swallow her. Eventually, the horrific smell drove the onlookers away, and we even heard a complaint from the neighboring room. I'm not signing it, Ethan. You can forget it. Chloe hissed, her voice trembling with rage. I gave you the best years of my life, and you think you can just kick me to the curb? No way. I almost laughed out loud. The delusion was breathtaking. Fine. Then wait for my lawyer to serve you. And get ready to be the star of tomorrow's news cycle. You two are going to be famous. I turned and walked out, leaving her staring at the divorce papers, tears pouring down her cheeks. Suddenly, she let out a guttural scream of rage. She snatched the water pitcher from her bedside table and hurled it at Leo, who was still unconscious. This is all your fault, she shrieked. Now he knows everything. You've ruined my life. She started grabbing anything within reach and throwing it at him. The impacts finally jolted Leo awake. He looked around, confused, then at a manic Chloe. What the hell is wrong with you? He groaned. I remember. The power went out or something. Suddenly, a memory seemed to flash in his mind. His eyes widened in horror. Just then, the anesthetic must have fully worn off. He tried to sit up, but the movement sent a jolt of agony through him. Leo let out a piercing shriek, his eyes staring down in terror at the blankets covering his lower body. His hand went down to the source of the pain. He pulled it back, covered in fresh blood. A scream, louder and more animalistic than any before, echoed down the entire hospital floor. It's gone. It's all gone. He turned on Chloe, his face a mask of pure fury. You bitch. You did this to me. You ruined my whole life. Ruined, he howled, grabbing his own water pitcher and throwing it back at her. You trash. I'll kill you. I'll kill you. I stood in the hallway, listening to the symphony of their screams. A feeling of profound, satisfying peace washed over me. One can't have children, the other is a mangled mess. It's a perfect match, a match made in hell, and I dare anyone to say otherwise. Just as I was about to leave, a hospital security guard ran up to me, out of breath. Mr. Cole, your in-laws, they're fighting with one of the doctors. You've got to come quick. He looked strangely excited, his eyes wide as he relayed the news. I followed him to the doctor's office, frowning. As we got closer, I could hear Karen's shrill, grating voice. You bunch of quack doctors. You butchered my son and my daughter, and now you're telling me it's not your fault. The doctor sounded exhausted. Ma'am, we went over the preoperative risk assessment with you. You signed the consent forms. I don't care what I signed. Karen shrieked. My daughter is going to be bedridden for the rest of her life. That's medical malpractice. Gary chimed in from the side. That's right. And my son, how is he supposed to live like this? How is he ever going to get married? The doctor slapped a thick file down on his desk. Look for yourselves. It's all signed, in black and white. Are you trying to back out of this now? Karen squared her shoulders, puffed out her chest, and grabbed the doctor by his collar. I don't care. This hospital is going to pay us $2 million in compensation, or this isn't over. Yeah, Gary added. My son can't have kids for the rest of his life. Make it $5 million. The doctor, though exasperated, patiently flipped through the documents, pointing to Gary's name and thumbprint on the consent forms. Gary's face fell. He promptly threw himself onto the floor and started wailing like a child. Wah! These crooked doctors are bullying an old man. They're taking advantage of me. They ruined my son and now they won't pay. Everybody, come and look at this injustice. Instantly, a crowd gathered at the office door, and a dozen phones came out to start recording. I had truly underestimated the shamelessness of this family. When they couldn't get money from me, they turned on the hospital, using every trick in the book. Tantrums, crocodile tears, and public scenes. Did they really think that would work? I pulled out my own phone and, without a moment's hesitation, called the police. In the end, Gary and Karen were arrested for disturbing the peace, and each spent a week in jail. The hospital's paperwork was ironclad. Every procedure was legal and by the book. Their shakedown failed. Instead, they ended up having to pay $3,000 for the 2 desks they broke during their brawl. I laid low for a while, letting my lawyer handle everything. The court date was set. By now, Chloe and Leo were infamous online. People made pilgrimages to the hospital just to stand outside their room and livestream, and passersby would often spit on their door. I heard their story had even gone international, becoming a bizarre viral sensation. When Gary and Karen got out of jail, they started wearing masks and hats to the hospital, only their eyes visible. The public was looking for them. Just when I thought it was all settling down, I got a call from the police. "Is this Mr. Ethan Cole, husband of Ms. Chloe Miller? We need you to come to the hospital." After hanging up, I went over everything in my head one more time, making sure there was no way any of this could blow back on me. Satisfied, I called an Uber. When I got to the hospital room, Karen was standing there, staring at me with a look that could kill. But there were no police officers. They'd tricked me into coming here. I leaned against the doorframe, curious to see what new scheme they'd cooked up. "Ethan, you knew about this all along, didn't you?" she snarled. "So that's their play." I feigned innocence. "Mom, what are you talking about? The night it happened, I was at dinner with you guys. You got home before I did." Chloe and Leo were lying in their beds, pretending to be asleep. It was obvious they had planned this. "Chloe was with you for years," Karen said, her tone shifting to one of righteous indignation. "Even if you divorce, you have to be responsible for her for the rest of her life." There it was, the real agenda. I nodded slowly. Of course, I should. After all, I love her so much. My sarcastic agreement seemed to embolden her. "And that condo of yours, you'll sign it over to Chloe's name." "No problem," I said, nodding again. Karen seemed stunned that I'd agreed so easily. She pressed her advantage. "And the doctor said her recovery and future treatments will cost a fortune. You might as well just cover your brother-in-law's medical bills, too. And he'll need money to, get married someday. So, another $3 million should cover it. You own a company. It's chump change for you." I almost laughed. Get married? What woman in her right mind would marry him? But I kept my cool and nodded again. This was too much even for Leo. He sat bolt upright in bed, no longer pretending to be asleep. "Dude, are you serious?" I let a cold smile spread across my face. "Are you?" In an instant, they knew I was mocking them. Their faces fell. Karen's teeth were gritted. "Ethan, if you don't transfer the money, we're calling the cops. I'll tell them you were involved. You think you'll get away with no responsibility?" I held up a hand. "Oh, I'll transfer something." But it wasn't money. It was the full, unedited, high-definition security camera footage. I sent it to their entire family group chat and posted it online, this time paying to boost it on every platform. This wasn't some grainy, shaky phone video. This was the crystal-clear main event. The family chat exploded. The notifications started flooding in, quickly hitting 99+. Chloe is on another level. She could apply for a Guinness World Record. How did our family produce someone so trashy? This is a disgrace to our name-check TikTok guys. The new video is already #1 trending. It's over. We're a national laughingstock. Karen, thinking the notification was a bank transfer, actually smiled. She thought I had caved. But when she looked at her phone, her face went slack. Her jaw dropped. The phone slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. "Ethan, you played us?" I smiled, shrugging. "You played me first. Did you really think I was that stupid? That I'd keep being your family's workhorse and doormat?" Gary suddenly appeared from behind a curtain. "I told you this was a stupid idea," he yelled at Karen. "This is all your daughter's fault. I wasted years of my life raising her." Seeing he wasn't getting any money from me, Gary redirected all his rage at Chloe. "I'll kill you," he roared, slapping her so hard across the face that she fell out of her bed. The fall tore her wounds open again, and dark, brackish blood began to seep through her bandages. "Dad, don't hit Chloe," Leo cried out, a pang of pity in his voice. Seeing her daughter being beaten, Karen's eyes went red. She turned into a furious lioness. "You dare touch my daughter? I'll kill you and your useless son." She lunged forward and delivered a vicious kick directly to Leo's surgical site. Leo curled into a ball, his back arching like a boiled shrimp, his face turning a shade of purple-black as he tried to protect his mutilated body. "Mom, stop hitting Leo," It was all my fault. Chloe sobbed from the floor, writhing in pain. Stop. Please. Both of you, just stop. But Karen was deaf to her pleas, kicking Leo's wounds over and over. Gary immediately joined the fray, and the two of them were at each other's throats again. The room descended into chaos. Screams, sobs, cries of pain, furious roars. I smiled and quietly slipped out of the room. See? I didn't even have to lift a finger. For just a little bit of money, these people would tear each other apart. The noise quickly attracted attention. The story of Chloe and Leo was already a media firestorm. Any new development was chum in the water for the gossip hounds. I put on my mask and left through a back exit. I heard later that it took 3 hospital security guards to pull them apart. Leo ended up with 3 broken ribs, his wounds torn into a bloody pulp. Karen didn't fare much better. Her leg was broken in the fight. Gary was the worst off, his face permanently disfigured from her nails. As for Chloe, Gary had landed a few kicks on her during the chaos. Her internal injuries had ruptured again. She was rushed back into surgery. Soon after, Gary and Karen were charged with aggravated assault and carted off to jail. Chloe and Leo lay in the hospital, recovering from their new surgeries, their fates uncertain. A month later, the court's judgment came down. Given the proof of Chloe's infidelity, her lack of any contribution to the household, and her non-involvement in my company, she was granted a divorce and left with nothing. At the same time, the verdict for Gary and Karen came in. For felony assault causing permanent disability, they were each sentenced to 5 years in prison. The next time I heard news of Chloe was 3 months later, after her parents were incarcerated. She had apparently descended into madness. She spent her days smashing things in her hospital room, tormented by the constant, foul odor from her body after yet another corrective surgery. The relentless cyberbullying and public shaming had shattered her mind. Then, one stormy night, Chloe picked up a fruit knife from her bedside table and plunged it into Leo's chest. In the ensuing struggle, they both tumbled out of the 6th-floor window and fell to their deaths. I sold the condo and bought a small apartment near my office. I threw myself completely into my work. Women, never again. Not for the rest of my life.